The morning sky above New York burned with unnatural light as massive shadows fell across the city. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the deck of her command ship, watching through reinforced glass as structures larger than mountains hung motionless in the air. As ships had appeared without warning at dawn, materializing above every major human settlement across 43 worlds in perfect synchronization. Kate had commanded the Earth Defense Fleet for 12 years, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this moment. The alien vessels dwarfed anything humanity had ever built, their crystalline hulls catching and bending sunlight into rainbow patterns that hurt to look at directly. Each ship stretched over 20 kilometers from bow to stern, yet they moved through the atmosphere as silently as falling snowdot. Her communication officer turned from his station with wide eyes. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies simultaneously. It's coming from every ship at once." "Put it through the main speakers," Kate commanded, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. The voice that filled the bridge was neither male nor female, but something else entirely. It spoke perfect English with harmonics that seemed to resonate from multiple sources at once. "People of Earth and her colonies, we greet you. We are the Galactic Harmony Council, guardians of peace in this region of space for over 10,000 of your years. We have watched your species expand beyond your home world with great interest and some concern." Kate exchanged glances with her senior staff. Dr. Alex Rodriguez, the fleet's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward in his chair. He had spent his entire career studying the possibility of alien contact, but his face now showed more worry than excitement. "Your rapid expansion and territorial behavior follows patterns we have observed before in younger species," the voice continued. "Such tendencies, if left unchecked, lead to conflict and suffering throughout the galaxy. We do not wish this fate for humanity or for the peaceful civilizations that surround you." The transmission paused, and Kate could hear her own breathing in the sudden silence. Around the bridge, officers stared at their instruments, watching readouts that showed energy signatures beyond their comprehension. "Therefore, the Council extends to humanity an offer of protection and guidance. We invite you to join the thousands of species who have found peace under our stewardship. We will relocate your populations to suitable worlds where you can flourish without the burden of territorial expansion or military development. Your children will know only harmony." Dr. Rodriguez stood abruptly, his face pale. "Admiral, they're talking about relocating our entire species." The alien voice resumed before Kate could respond. "We understand this may seem overwhelming to a young species such as yours. Therefore, we grant you 30 days to consider our generous offer. During this time, our ships will remain in position to assist with any questions you may have. We encourage your leaders to review the historical records we are now transmitting to your networks." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. "What happens if we refuse?" As if the alien could hear her thoughts, the voice answered, "We have found that all species eventually choose the path of harmony when they understand the alternatives. Those few who have initially resisted have always come to appreciate the wisdom of our guidance, once properly educated about the consequences of continued aggression." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in dead silence. Kate stared out at the massive ship hanging above Manhattan, its shadow turning the city into a patchwork of darkness and reflected light. After a moment, she turned to her communications officer. "Get me Secretary Chun in Washington. Emergency priority." Lisa Chun appeared on the main screen within minutes, her usually composed demeanor cracked with stress. Behind her, Kate could see the chaos of the emergency command center, with dozens of officials shouting into phones and staring at computer screens. "Kate, please tell me your ships detected something before these things just appeared." "Nothing, Lisa. Our sensors showed Empty space right up until the moment they materialized. Whatever technology they're using is centuries ahead of ours. Lisa rubbed her temples. The president is calling an emergency session with all world leaders. Every major city on Earth has one of those ships overhead, and we're getting similar. Reports from all our colonies. They appeared everywhere at exactly the same time. Dr. Rodriguez stepped closer to the screen. Secretary Chun, have you had a chance to review the historical data they transmitted? Our analysts are going through it now, but Alex, what they're describing ... Lisa's voice trailed off. They claim to have guided over 3,000 species to peaceful coexistence. But when we cross-reference their data with our own astronomical surveys, many of the star systems they mention show signs of having once supported advanced civilizations that are now completely dark. Kate felt her stomach drop. You mean these civilizations are gone? Not gone exactly, Lisa said, pulling up a data pad. According to the Council's records, they're all thriving agricultural societies living in perfect harmony with nature. But our telescopes show no signs of space travel, no industrial activity, no radio emissions. It's as if entire advanced civilizations just stopped developing. Dr. Rodriguez was already pulling up star charts on his tablet. I need to see those records. If what you're suggesting is true, then this offer of protection might be something else entirely. The bridge shuddered slightly as the massive alien ship above them adjusted its position. Kate watched the movement with professional interest, noting how the vessel seemed to ignore basic physics in the way it moved through the atmosphere. Lisa, I need permission to quietly dispatch some of our fastest scouts to investigate these so-called protected worlds. If we're going to make a decision that affects our entire species, we need real intelligence. Absolutely not, Lisa said. Immediately. Kate, you saw the size of those ships. We can't risk provoking them. And we can't make an informed decision without facts, Kate replied firmly. They gave us 30 days. That suggests they expect us to take time to consider this. Carefully. Careful consideration requires investigation. Captain Ryan Blake stepped forward from his position at the navigation station. He commanded the exploration vessel UES Horizon, one of the fastest ships in the human fleet. Admiral, the Horizon could reach the nearest protected world in 18 days. If we left within the hour, we'd have time to investigate and return before the deadline. Lisa shook her head. It's too dangerous. If they catch you snooping around, then we'll know exactly what kind of neighbors we're dealing with, Kate said quietly. Lisa, look at this from their perspective. They have overwhelming technological superiority. They could have simply destroyed us or taken us by force. But instead, they're offering us a choice and giving us time to think about it. Why? Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his tablet. Because they need us to choose willingly. If they were just conquerors, they wouldn't bother with all this diplomatic protocol. Or, Kate said, studying the alien ship through the viewport, because they've learned that forced compliance doesn't work, as well as voluntary surrender. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Before finally nodding, do it. But Kate, if your people get caught, they won't, Kate said with more confidence than she felt. Ryan, prep the Horizon for immediate departure. Full stealth protocols. I want you to visit 3 different protected worlds and document everything you find. As Captain Blake hurried from the bridge to prepare his mission, Kate turned back to the massive alien vessel hanging in the sky above Earth's largest city. Somewhere inside that crystalline hull, beings with technology beyond human comprehension were waiting for humanity's answer to their generous offer. Kate had a growing suspicion that the choice they were being offered was no choice at all, but rather the difference between walking into a cage or being dragged into one. The next 30 days would determine not just humanity's future, but whether humanity would have a future worth living. The alien ship pulsed once with soft light, as if acknowledging her thoughts, then returned to its silent vigil over the city below. Captain Ryan Blake guided the UES Horizon through the void between stars, running silent and dark as his ship approached the Kepler system. 18 days had passed since the alien vessels appeared above Earth, and the horizon had crossed nearly 40 light years using humanity's most advanced stealth technology. Behind him, Commander Jake Sullivan checked weapon systems, while Dr. Ben Parker monitored alien communications for any sign they had been detected. The first protected world lay ahead, a blue-green planet that Council records claimed housed the peaceful Aldari civilization. According to the transmitted data, the Aldari had embraced Council guidance 3 centuries ago and now lived in perfect harmony with their environment. Blake studied the long-range sensor readings with growing unease. "Ben, are you seeing this?" Blake asked, pointing at his display. Dr. Parker looked up from his instruments. No industrial emissions, no radio signals, no orbital structures. For a civilization that supposedly spans their entire planet, they're remarkably quiet. Commander Sullivan joined them at the sensor station. Could be low-tech by design. Maybe they really did choose a simpler way of life. Blake shook his head. Look at these geological surveys. 300 years ago, our deep space telescopes detected massive cities on this world. Metal and glass structures visible from orbit. Now there's nothing but agricultural settlements scattered across the continents. The Horizon entered orbit under full stealth, its advanced sensors mapping the planet below. What they found made Blake's blood run cold. Scattered across the surface were the ruins of enormous cities, their metal skeletons overgrown with vegetation. But among the ruins, humanoid figures moved in organized patterns through carefully maintained farmland. "Jake, prep a stealth shuttle. We're going down for a closer look." The landing party descended through the planet's atmosphere in a shuttle designed to avoid detection. They sat down in a forest near one of the agricultural settlements, watching through electronic camouflage as the Aldari went about their daily routines. The beings below looked healthy and well-fed, but something was wrong with their behavior. They moved in perfect synchronization, working their fields in identical patterns without speaking to each other. When one finished a task, another would immediately begin the next phase without any visible communication. "Ben, are you recording this?" Sullivan whispered into his comm unit. "Every second," Dr. Parker replied from the shuttle. "Jake, scan one of them with the medical sensors. I need to know what we're looking at." Sullivan crept closer to the settlement, staying hidden in the forest edge. He aimed the portable scanner at the nearest Aldari and nearly dropped the device when the readings came back. "Ryan, you need to see this. There's some kind of neural implant at the base of their skulls. It's connected directly to their brain. STEM." Blake felt sick as the implications hit him. They're not choosing to live this way. They're being controlled. The landing party spent 6 hours documenting the settlement before returning to the Horizon. As they prepared to jump to the next system, Dr. Parker made another disturbing discovery while analyzing the brain scans. "The implants aren't just controlling their behavior," he said quietly. "They're suppressing higher brain functions, memory formation, creative thinking, individual decision-making. These people have been reduced to biological robots." The second world told the same story. The Vakani had once been master engineers whose space elevators and orbital cities were legendary throughout their region of space. Now they tended gardens, with vacant expressions while their greatest achievements crumbled into rust. The third world was worse. The Zephyrians had been artists and philosophers, their culture rich with music and literature that had spread to dozens of neighboring systems. Now they sat in silence, weaving simple cloth patterns over and over again. Their libraries had been burned, their musical instruments destroyed, their ark replaced with identical statues of council symbols. Back on Earth, Maria Santos worked through the night in a secure facility beneath Washington, D.C. The intelligence analyst had been tasked with decoding alien communications, and what she had found made her question everything the council had told humanity. "Secretary Chun, you need to see this," Maria said as Lisa entered the analysis center. Lisa looked exhausted after 3 weeks of emergency meetings and crisis management. "Please tell me you have good news, Maria. I've been monitoring council communications between their ships. They think our encryption is too primitive to decode their transmissions, so they've been talking freely." Maria pulled up a series of translated messages on her screen. They're not discussing peaceful integration. They're debating how long to wait before implementing what they call the pacification protocol. Lisa leaned over Maria's shoulder to read the translations. "What's a pacification protocol?" "Based on the context, it's what they do when a species refuses their offer of protection. But Ryan, it gets worse. They've been studying us for decades, maybe longer. They have detailed psychological profiles on human leadership, tactical analysis of our military capabilities, and something they call adaptation ratings." "Adaptation ratings?" Maria nodded grimly. "They rate species based on how quickly they adapt to new situations and how resistant they are to control. Humans scored higher on the adaptation scale than any species they've encountered in over 2,000 years. They're terrified of us." Lisa stared at the screen. "Terrified?" "They have ships the size of cities hanging over every major population center on Earth." "That's just it," Maria said, switching to another set of decoded messages. "Listen to this. Transmission from their lead ship. The humans continue to display unpredictable innovation in response to our presence. Recommend acceleration of timeline before they develop countermeasures we have not anticipated." Lisa felt her stomach drop. They're planning to move early. There's more. They've been in contact with 3 other council fleets, requesting additional ships for what they're calling a high-resistance pacification. They've never needed more than 1 fleet before. Meanwhile, aboard Admiral Morrison's flagship, Dr. Alex Rodriguez was making his own disturbing discoveries. The historical records provided by the council contained subtle inconsistencies that became obvious once he started looking for them. "Kate, I think I know why they gave us 30 days. Alex said as he entered the Admiral's ready room. Morrison looked up from tactical reports. "Please tell me it's because they're genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence. They need time to position additional assets. The 30-day window isn't for our benefit. It's for theirs. They're using the time to bring in reinforcements and study our responses to their presence." Alex activated a holographic display showing the positions of council ships around Earth and the colonies. "Look at their formation patterns. They're not in defensive positions. They're in orbital bombardment configuration, but they're missing key support vessels." Morrison studied the display. "How long before their reinforcements arrive?" "Based on their ship movements and the fleet compositions they've used in previous pacifications, I estimate 72 hours. Morrison was quiet for a moment, then activated her secure communication system. "Get me Secretary Chun and Captain Blake. Priority Alpha." When the connections were established, Morrison didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We're out of time. The Council is accelerating their timeline, and our reconnaissance missions have confirmed our worst fears about their methods." Blake's voice came through clearly, despite the distance. "Admiral, the protected worlds aren't protected. They're prison camps. Every advanced species the Council has guided has been lobotomized and reduced to agricultural slaves." Lisa Chun appeared on screen, her face pale. "Kate, Maria's intercepted communications suggesting they plan to move against us within days, not weeks." Morrison nodded grimly. "Then we need to move first. Ryan, abort your current mission and return to Earth." Immediately. Lisa, I need you to authorize Operation Prometheus. Kate, we don't even know if Prometheus will work against their technology. Then we'd better find out before they decide our 30 days are up, Morrison replied. Because based on everything we've learned, the choice they offered us was never a choice at all. It was just the difference between walking into our cage or being dragged into it. As the transmission ended, Morrison stared out at the massive alien ship hanging above Earth's surface. Somewhere inside that crystalline hull, beings were planning the systematic destruction of human civilization and culture. They would leave humanity's bodies intact, but destroy everything that made humans truly human. Morrison had spent her entire career preparing for war, but she had never imagined fighting for the right to remain who they were. The next 72 hours would determine whether humanity joined the galaxy as free beings or as broken slaves wearing their own faces. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in the command center deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, watching as dozens of screens displayed the most audacious military operation in human history. Operation Prometheus had been humanity's deepest secret for 3 years, born from the paranoid assumption that first contact would not be peaceful. Now that paranoia was about to save their species, General Tony Mitchell coordinated the global strike from his position at the tactical display. All units report ready, Admiral. Prometheus stations Alpha through Zulu are online and awaiting your order. Morrison looked at the countdown timer showing 57 hours until the Council's reinforcement fleets arrived. Dr. Wright, final assessment on alien psychology. Dr. Helen Wright, the military psychologist who had spent 3 weeks analyzing every scrap of Council communication, stepped forward. They expect submission or destruction, nothing else. They've never encountered a species that fights back effectively because they eliminate the possibility before it develops. Their weakness is overconfidence. And if we're wrong about their reaction, then we'll know within the next 6 hours. Wright replied grimly. Morrison took a deep breath and activated the global command frequency. All Prometheus stations, this is Admiral Morrison. Operation Olive Branch is now active. Execute your orders. Across 12 star systems, humanity's response began with perfect coordination. Captain Sarah Johnson led the Colonial Defense Corps in the most visible part of the operation, launching simultaneous strikes against Council installations throughout human space. But these weren't attacks meant to destroy. They were demonstrations of capability that had been planned down to the smallest detail dot at the Council monitoring station orbiting Jupiter. Johnson's ships disabled the facility's communications array with surgical precision, leaving the aliens stranded but unharmed. Similar strikes hit Council observation posts throughout the solar system, each attack carefully calculated to prove humanity could reach any target they chose while deliberately avoiding civilian casualties. The real message, however, was being delivered personally. Johnson's flagship, the U.S. Liberty, docked with the massive Council vessel hanging above Earth. The alien ship's defensive systems could have vaporized the human vessel instantly. But Johnson was betting everything on Dr. Wright's psychological analysis of Council behavior. The docking bay of the Council ship was a marvel of crystalline architecture that seemed to grow rather than be built. Johnson walked through corridors that pulsed with soft light, accompanied by a small honor guard whose weapons remained holstered despite the circumstances. She had volunteered for this mission, knowing she might not return, but also knowing that someone had to look the aliens in the eye when humanity gave its answer. Ambassador Zethkar waited in what appeared to be a garden suspended in space, with flowing water and plants that seemed to come from dozens of different worlds. The Vorthic representative was even more imposing in person, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with a body that looked like living crystal shot through with veins of blue light. Captain Johnson, Zethkar said in a harmonious voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Your species continues to surprise us with your unpredictable actions. We assume you have come to discuss the terms of your surrender. Johnson pulled a sealed container from her uniform and placed it on the table between them. Ambassador, I've come to return something that belongs to you. Zethkar's crystalline features shifted in what might have been confusion as Johnson opened the container to reveal an olive branch, perfectly preserved and untouched. Earth's leadership asked me to return this symbol of peace that you offered us. We're grateful for the offer, but we must decline. You would choose destruction over harmony? Johnson activated a holographic projector that displayed images Captain Blake had captured on the protected worlds. This is what you call harmony, Ambassador. Beings with neural implants that destroy their ability to think freely, cultures erased, civilizations reduced to agricultural slavery. We've seen your definition of peace. For the first time since humanity had encountered the Council, Zethkar seemed genuinely surprised. The blue light in his crystalline body pulsed faster as he studied the images. You sent scouts to the protected worlds? We did our homework, Johnson replied calmly. Just like you did yours. We know you've been studying us for decades. We know about the pacification protocol. We know about the reinforcement fleets you've called in. And we know why you're really afraid of us. Afraid? The concept seemed to genuinely puzzle the alien ambassador. Johnson smiled grimly. You're afraid because we don't fit into your neat categories. Every other species you've encountered follows predictable patterns. They either submit immediately or fight conventionally and lose. But humans are different. We adapt. We innovate. We refuse to accept that any situation is hopeless. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the precise strikes taking place across human space. Your installations are being neutralized as we speak, but notice that we're not trying to destroy them. We're showing you that we can reach anything we want to reach, anywhere we want to reach it. This isn't a declaration of war, Ambassador. It's a declaration of independence. Zethkar studied the tactical displays with what appeared to be growing alarm. Your ships are primitive compared to ours. How did you achieve such coordination? Because you made one fundamental error in your analysis of humanity, Johnson said, standing to her full height. You assume that because we're chaotic and unpredictable, we can't work together when we need to. You're wrong. When humanity faces extinction, we become one species with one purpose. She reactivated the holographic projector, which now displayed a document written in both English and the Council's own language. This is Earth's formal response to your offer. We thank the Council for their generous proposal, but Earth and all her colonies will remain free. We demand the immediate withdrawal of all Council forces from human space and the liberation of all species currently under your protection. Impossible, Zethkar said, his harmonious voice showing strain for the first time. The protected species cannot survive without our guidance. They have forgotten how to govern themselves. Then help them remember, Johnson replied. Remove the neural implants. Give them back their freedom to choose. If they truly want your protection after that, we won't interfere. But the choice has to be theirs to make. The alien ambassador was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form pulsing with rapid patterns of light. Finally, he spoke. And if the Council refuses these demands? Johnson picked up the olive branch and held it out to him. Then you'll discover why every species that's ever tried to conquer humanity has failed. We don't just fight for ourselves, Ambassador. We fight for the idea that every thinking being has the right to be free. And ideas, once released, are impossible to destroy. She left the olive branch on the table and turned to go. You have 6 hours to begin withdrawing from human space. After that, we'll assume the Council has chosen war over coexistence. As Johnson and her honor guard returned to their ship, alarms began sounding throughout the Council vessel. The demonstrations, taking place across human space, had achieved their intended effect. The aliens now understood that humanity had been planning for this confrontation long before the first Council ship appeared. But the real shock was yet to come. As reports flooded in from across Council space, Zethkar realized that humanity's defiance was spreading like wildfire. On protected worlds throughout the galaxy, the neural implants that had suppressed free thought for centuries were beginning to malfunction. Something in the human transmissions, their music, their art, their stubborn insistence on freedom, was awakening memories that the Council thought had been erased forever. For the first time in millennia, the beings who had been reduced to agricultural slaves were beginning to remember that they had once been scientists, artists, philosophers, and explorers. The virus of human freedom was spreading through the galaxy, and no amount of Council technology could stop an idea whose time had come. Zethkar stared at the olive branch Johnson had left behind, understanding at last why his people feared humanity so deeply. They weren't just another species to be controlled or destroyed. They were living proof that freedom was possible, and that truth was more dangerous to the Council than any weapon humanity could build. The Council's response came exactly 6 hours after Captain Johnson's ultimatum expired. Admiral Frank Davis watched from the command deck of the orbital defense platform as massive energy readings lit up sensors across the solar system. The alien reinforcement fleets had arrived early, materializing from hyperspace in perfect formation around Earth and her colonies. "Count them, Lieutenant," Davis ordered his tactical officer. "Sir, I'm reading 47 Council warships in Earth orbit alone. Similar numbers appearing around Mars, Luna, and the outer colonies. This is the largest alien fleet ever assembled in our space." Davis nodded grimly. The Council had committed nearly a quarter of their total military strength to humanity's pacification. Dr. Carl Johnson, the military strategist who had helped plan Earth's defense, approached the command station with his tablet displaying fleet movements. "Frank, they're not just here to intimidate us. This is a full pacification deployment. They mean to end this quickly and decisively." Admiral Davis activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Davis. Council has made their choice. Execute Operation Prometheus Phase 2. Across human space, the true scope of humanity's preparation became clear. Hidden shipyards that had been operating in secret for 3 years suddenly came online, their automated production systems releasing hundreds of vessels that had been built using reverse-engineered alien technology improved by human innovation. The ships emerging from concealment were smaller than Council vessels, but moved with impossible grace through space. Human engineers had studied the alien hulls recovered from previous encounters and discovered that Council technology relied on predictable patterns and standardized responses. The human ships had been designed to exploit those weaknesses. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Roberts led the first wave of assault craft as they launched from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt. Her Marines had trained for this moment using captured Council equipment, learning to fight an enemy that had never faced boarding actions before. "Remember your training," Roberts broadcast to her assault teams. "The aliens don't expect us to. Come aboard their ships. Their internal defenses are designed to repel energy weapons, not close combat. Get inside their decision-making centers and force them to react instead of execute their plans." The first Council ship to fall was the massive dreadnought, hanging above New York. Roberts led her Marines through airlocks that the aliens had never bothered to secure properly, moving through corridors designed for beings who had never conceived of hand-to-hand combat. The crystalline Vorthic crew fought with energy weapons that were devastating at range, but useless in close quarters. But the real battle was being fought on frequencies that human ears couldn't hear. Dr. Nina Martinez coordinated the most important aspect of Earth's defense from a bunker beneath the Sahara Desert. She directed teams of human artists, musicians, and storytellers as they broadcast on every channel the Council used for communication. Remember, we're not trying to jam there. Signals, Martinez told her teams. We're trying to wake up everyone who's listening. Every song, every poem, every story about freedom and choice needs to reach the protected worlds. The effect was immediate and devastating to Council operations. On planets throughout their empire, beings who had been controlled by neural implants for centuries began to experience something they had forgotten existed: independent thought. The human transmissions weren't just entertainment. They were reminders of what it meant to be truly alive. On the former Alderi homeworld, the agricultural workers suddenly stopped their synchronized movements and looked at each other with confusion and growing awareness. On the Vekani world, engineers stared at the ruins of their once great cities and began to remember how to build. On Zephyria, artists picked up instruments they hadn't touched in 300 years and began to play music that had been forbidden for generations. The Council fleet above, Earth found itself fighting on two fronts against human ships that refused to follow conventional battle patterns and against a growing rebellion throughout their own empire. Ambassador Zethkar, still aboard his flagship, received reports that chilled his crystalline core. The neural control networks are failing throughout the protected sectors, his aide reported. The human transmissions are somehow interfering with the implant frequencies. Protected populations are beginning to resist their guidance. Zethkar studied the tactical displays, showing the battle raging around Earth. Human ships darted between his massive vessels like angry insects, their small size and unpredictable movements making them nearly impossible to target effectively. Worse, every time a Council ship was damaged, human boarding parties would swarm aboard and seize control of critical systems. How are they adapting so quickly to our technology? Zethkar demanded his tactical coordinator, a spider-like being from the Nexari species, manipulated the holographic display with multiple limbs. They're not fighting like any species we've encountered before. They study our responses in real time and change their tactics accordingly. Each wave of attacks is different from the last. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Davis coordinated the defense with the calm efficiency of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. The Council ships were more powerful individually, but they fought like a machine following a program. Human forces fought like a living organism, adapting and evolving with every exchange. Amy, how are your boarding operations proceeding? Davis asked through the tactical network. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts' voice came back over heavy static as explosions echoed in the background. We've seized control of 3 Council ships and disabled 7 others. The aliens are completely unprepared for close combat. They're trying to adapt, but their response patterns are too rigid. Dr. Johnson looked up from his analysis station. Frank, I'm seeing something interesting in their fleet movements. They're following predetermined battle protocols, even when those protocols are clearly failing. It's like they can't conceive of changing their fundamental approach mid-battle. Davis smiled grimly. Then let's give them something they definitely haven't planned for. He activated a new communication channel that reached every human ship in the system. All vessels, execute wildcard protocol. Full tactical randomization. What happened next would become legendary in military history textbooks. Every human ship began following completely random movement patterns while maintaining coordinated fire on Council vessels. The alien fleet, which relied on predictive algorithms to target enemies, found itself unable to lock on to targets that had no predictable behavior. But the decisive moment came when the protected worlds began to fight back. The Kalari, once a species of brilliant scientists, suddenly remembered how to operate the ancient weapons hidden beneath their world's surface. The Drakener, who had been the galaxy's finest warriors before their pacification, broke free of their neural controls and turned captured Council ships against their former masters. Reports flooded into Zethkar's command center as the foundation of Council power crumbled. The protected species weren't just remembering their past, they were actively rebelling against 3 centuries of forced servitude. The neural implants that had kept them docile were failing faster than Council technicians could repair them. Ambassador, his communications officer, reported with barely controlled panic, "We're receiving surrender requests from 17 protected worlds. They're demanding immediate withdrawal of all Council forces and the removal of neural control systems." Zethkar stared at the tactical display, showing his once mighty fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern of warfare. Around Earth, nearly half of his ships had been captured or disabled, while throughout Council space, the empire that had maintained order for millennia was dissolving into chaos. For the first time in his long life, the Council ambassador understood what the humans had been trying to tell him. Freedom wasn't just a concept. It was a force of nature that could not be contained once it was released. Humanity hadn't just defended themselves. They had reminded an entire galaxy what it meant to be free. 6 months after the battle above Earth, Ambassador Claire Thompson walked through the crystal gardens of New Geneva, humanity's first joint colony with alien partners. A massive space station orbited between Earth and Mars, serving as the headquarters for what had once been impossible to imagine, a truly free galactic community. The transformation had been swift, but not without challenges. Captain Steve Wilson, now commanding the joint exploration vessel UES Discovery, had just returned from the Outer Rim, where his mixed crew of humans and former Council species were mapping regions that had been forbidden for millennia. His reports described worlds where ancient civilizations had hidden from Council control, preserving their freedom in the darkness between the stars. "Claire, you need to see what we found in the Meridian sector," Wilson said as he entered the ambassador's office. Behind him walked Kalari scientist Teshmara, whose people had been among the first to break free from neural control during the uprising. Thompson looked up from the reports covering her desk. The past 6 months had been a constant stream of liberated worlds requesting assistance, former Council species learning to govern themselves again, and the delicate work of building something new from the ruins of galactic tyranny. "Please tell me it's good news. Steve, I've had 3 different species asking for help settling territorial disputes today." Teshmara stepped forward, her 4-armed form moving with the graceful precision that made her people such gifted engineers. "Ambassador Thompson, we have discovered something remarkable. There are over 40 civilizations that successfully resisted Council expansion by fleeing to the Galactic Rim. They've been waiting for centuries for the Council to fall." Wilson activated a holographic display showing star maps of the outer galaxy. "They call themselves the Free Worlds Alliance. They've been maintaining their independence in exile, developing technologies the Council never knew existed. They want to join our new federation." Thompson felt a mixture of excitement and overwhelming responsibility. Each day brought new challenges as the galaxy struggled to redefine itself without the Council's oppressive order. Dr. Nina Martinez, now heading the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program, entered the office carrying reports from the liberated worlds. "Claire, I have updates from the former protected worlds," Martinez said, setting down a stack of data tablets. "The Alverai have successfully removed the last of their neural implants and are beginning to rebuild their cities. The Vikani completed their first new space elevator in 2 centuries. And the Zephyrians just published their first collection of original music since their pacification." But not every liberation had been smooth. Thompson reviewed reports from worlds where generations of neural control had left populations struggling to understand basic concepts like individual choice and democratic governance. Some former council species had requested human advisors to help them remember how to function as free societies. "How are the Drakener adjusting?" Thompson asked. Doc Martinez pulled up a specific report. "They're having the hardest time. 3 centuries of forced pacification turned the galaxy's greatest warriors into agricultural workers. They're eager to reclaim their military traditions, but struggling with the concept that strength should be used to protect rather than conquer." Through the office windows, Thompson could see children from a dozen different species playing together in the station's recreation areas. Human children ran alongside young Kalari, Akani, and even a few Vorthik who had chosen to abandon the failing council remnants. It was a sight that would have been impossible under the old order. Captain Blake, who had been promoted to head of colonial defense after his reconnaissance missions proved crucial to humanity's survival, appeared on the main communication screen from his new headquarters on Luna. "Claire, we've received formal surrender from the last council holdout fleet. Ambassador Zethkar is requesting safe passage to the neutral zone we established for former council officials who want to retire peacefully." Thompson nodded. The former council ambassador had become something of a tragic figure, watching his life's work crumble as species after species chose freedom over the security his people had provided for millennia. Yet he had shown honor in the end, ordering his remaining forces to stand down rather than fight a war that could only bring more suffering. "Grant his request, Ryan. The galaxy has seen enough conflict." The challenges went beyond politics and governance. Dr. Ben Parker, now leading the Joint Technology Council, had discovered that many former council species had forgotten how to innovate. Centuries of standardized existence had left them dependent on established patterns of thinking that made adaptation difficult. The good news is that proximity to humans seems to accelerate the recovery process, Parker reported during the weekly council meeting. Species that work directly with human advisors are rediscovering their creative potential much faster than those trying to rebuild in isolation. Lisa Chun, who had transitioned from Earth's government to become the new Federation's Secretary of Development, raised a concern that had been growing for months. "We need to be careful not to become the new council. Some of these species are looking to us for guidance in everything from technology to social structure. We can't let them become dependent on human leadership." Thompson understood the danger. Humanity's role in galactic liberation had created a natural tendency for other species to defer to human judgment. But the goal had never been to replace council tyranny with human hegemony. "That's why we're establishing the Autonomous Development Program," Thompson announced. "Each species will have human advisors available if requested, but the focus will be on helping them rediscover their own unique approaches to governance and innovation." The program's first success story was already visible through the office windows. A group of young Zephyrians had established an art academy on New Geneva, teaching other species about creative expression while learning from human and alien artists alike. Their music now played throughout the station, a haunting blend of melodies that no single species could have created alone. Admiral Morrison, now retired but serving as an advisor to the new Federation, joined the council meeting via hologram from her home on Earth. "I've been reviewing the reports from the exploration missions. What we're finding changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history." She activated a new display showing archaeological data from recently explored worlds. The Council wasn't the first galactic civilization. There have been at least 3 previous federations that rose and fell over the past 50,000 years. Each one collapsed when it became too focused on maintaining order rather than encouraging growth. The implications were sobering. Even their new federation could eventually face the same fate if they lost sight of the principles that created it. Thompson looked around the room at the mixed group of humans and aliens, working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. Then we'll have to make sure we remember why we fought, Thompson said quietly. The Council offered peace through control. We chose peace through freedom. As long as we remember that difference, we'll avoid their mistakes. Outside the office windows, the children of a dozen species continued their games, inventing new rules, and solving problems with the natural creativity that the Council had spent millennia trying to suppress. In their laughter and imagination, Thompson could see the future of the galaxy, chaotic, unpredictable, and beautifully free. Years later, when historians asked why humanity succeeded where others had failed, Thompson would give a simple answer. We didn't just want to be free. We wanted everyone to be free. The Council offered us peace, but peace without freedom isn't peace at all. It's just a prettier cage, and cages are meant to be broken. The olive branch Earth had returned, untouched but firm, had grown into a forest of possibilities that stretched across the galaxy. And in that forest, every species could finally choose their own path among the stars.